We'll start with Zoom from Sudan. Hello, Isaac. 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 Hello.
Yes, do you hear me?
Yeah, we hear very well.
Very good.
You're welcome. Hello. Isaac.
Yes.
Yeah, 10 minutes to present.
Okay.
The floor is yours.
Is it okay now?
Yeah, it is well. You can continue now.
All right. Yeah, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. My name is Isaac Bazuga, as you can see. The title of my paper is Soils of the Greenbelt Zone of South Sudan, a case study of Sakure and Eugene Payams in Western Equatoria. The outline is here: introduction, problem statement, the research objective, materials, result, and discussion conclusion. This part of the studies I've done for my research. Introduction was like South Sudan became independent from the Sudan of July 9, 2011. But it is struggling to feed its estimated 13 million population. The country covers 648,000 kilometers square, divided into 6 main agroecological zones. Rainfall pattern is unimodeled in major part, but the green belt bordering Uganda, DR, Congo, and Central Africa Republic receives bimodal rains averaging at 1,600 millimeters per annum. The annual temperature ranges from 18 to 31 recently. Agriculture is characterized by low input, small scale farming. Cereals include sorghum, maize, bulrush millet, finger millet, and plain rice. The average per capita yield of cereal is only about 0.7 tons per hectare. The problem we're trying to investigate is there is decline in soil fertility. That has received no attention in South Sudan, unlike crop improvement, insect pests, and disease control. Fertilizers are rarely applied in this country, although locally they are available in the big towns like Juba and many other places. Due to lack of soil information and low return from unskilled fertilization, meaning the people have the fertilizers but they don't use them according to the right way. Farmers tend to adopt shifting cultivation as a natural way to improve soil fertility and productivity. But the approach is not sustainable due to increasing population and pressure on arable land. This calls for agricultural intensification, which is possible if soil information is made available and soil nutrient deficiencies are well established. The research objective is the general objective is to map the soils of the Greenbelt zone, specifically in Sakure and Middle Payams of Zara and Yambo counties, respectively. Specific objectives to characterize the soils for physical and chemical properties, to establish the potential and management options of soils in the Greenbelt, and to establish the key constraints of soils and possibilities for increasing maize production in the Greenbelt zone. The questions include: what is the actual fertility test of the soil in this current day? What kind of management does it require? Is it possible to increase maize yield per unit area? This map here shows where the location of That's at the border with the Congo, the DR Congo. That's the green part is where it's. The materials, I produced a map that I have shown to you, and using a method of condition and cumulative sampling is what was used to come up with the points for observation and sampling. GPS was used to navigate and identify profile sites. Soil profile description 4 was adapted from the National Soil Services, Tanzania. Because, as you know, South Sudan still did not have its own. It's not, so we adopted the one of Tanzania. 0.5 kilogram soil sample was collected from each soil profile genetic horizon. Soil samples were analyzed for physical and chemical properties. The Department of Soil and Geological Sciences Laboratory, Sokoine University of Agriculture. These were the methods we used to identify the particle size analysis, electrical conductivity, pH in water was done, organic carbon, total nitrogen, extractable phosphorus, cation exchange capacity, exchangeable bases. The results from literature, we have seen that the climate is hot, tropical, semi-humid, low-level climate, with a single prolonged wet season and short dry season. The rainfall, as I've said, is ranging from 1,000 to 1,350 millimeter to 1,600 millimeter. The parental vegetation mosaic of tropical rainforest savanna. The soils are red, acid, non-alluvial soils of the Nile Congo and Nile Chad watershed, formed from the weathering of the ancient underlying rocks. The results of the physical and chemical properties are shown here. Here, I cannot explain this, but let's go to the discussion because here, not very well. Now, based on this result I've shown up, I've not shown all the results, only the selected one. This one I've shown up here is the topsoil. And after classifying the soil, we found about there are 6 types of soil. But here in these results here I've shown to you, the soils are the ceramic acrid soil, the flumy soils, the lumbry soils, and then retty soils. These are the major soils in that area. In the discussion, the dominant soil texture class is semi-clay loam, and clay content increases down the soil profile. The soils were formed by elevation and elevation. Probability is also high that the fine soil particles are moved to valleys by sheet erosion. The parental material is basement complex of cysts and gneiss. Gneiss, according to literature, contain mica or feldspar. These are the major sources of clay in highly weathery conditions in the tropics and especially produces the carbonate type clay. The pH in this area has ranged from 5.5 to 7.5. And this range of pH is suitable for most of the micro and the macro nutrients taken by most crops. The discussion continues. 90% of the studied soils have very low soil organic carbon. And only 10% of the soils had medium level of soil organic carbon. And then again, 90% of the samples analyzed showed low levels of total nitrogen. So both soil organic carbon and total nitrogen decreases with the depth in the profile. The Bray 1 extractable phosphorus was very low. That's mine, less than 7 milligram per kilogram in all the soil samples. The cation exchange capacity is very low to low levels, between 4 and 15.4 milliequivalent per 100 gram. These results indicate that the soils are generally poor in fertility status. However, Conditions still favor the growth of a variety of crops, including maize, sorghum, rice, millets, fruits, fruit trees, coffee, oil crops, and timber, such as mahogany. Now, if the soil fertility status can be managed to improve crop productivity, then people can continue to produce crops on this soil. In conclusion, the soils of greenbelt zone are dominated by sand particles, therefore they are coarse textured. The soils are acidic, reaction with low organic carbon and very low CEC. But it's shallow and subject to leaching. Implication is that the soils are inherently poor in fertility status, crop productivity.
Sorry, participants. Seems there is a problem with the networking from Sudan. So, he has finished. I think it was the conclusion part. Now we call upon the second presenter, Samiji. 10 minutes, please. Then from Samiji will form Flora Kajuna. Shout out. Then another one will be Freddy Lowen. Yeah, thank you. And the last one will be Alex. Dr. Somebody else. Lupenza is around? Lupenza?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ali Samiji. I'm here to present the paper titled "The Prevalence of Hermoparasite in Rodents and their zoonotic potential from Ruaha Ward in Kilosa District, Tanzania. I'm presenting on behalf of co-authors, Dr. Katakweba and Professor Faye. So the outline of the presentation includes the introduction, problem discussion, conclusion, and finally recommendation. So, by introduction, rodents are the most frequent and important mammals on the earth. 6 zoonosis caused by various bacteria, fungi, helminths, and protozoa. And hemoparasites are those parasites which pass most of their lives, usually in the vascular systems of vertebrates and mammals. For instance, Leishmania, Yersinia pestis, and the others. So zoonotic parasites are those parasites that can cause diseases in animals and humans and are widespread in all the rodents and humans. So, problem statement. Parasite disease have an unbearable impact on humans and animal health worldwide, particularly in developing countries, for instance in Tanzania. And the close associations between rodents and humans, especially in rural areas, facilitate the spread of zoonotic disease. So that notions led us to come up with these studies. So due to difference in geographical and ecological condition in the countries, parasitic fauna of rodents in each ecological setting is different. So that's why we decided to do this study at Ruaha Ward. So despite the rodent's physical damage to humans and economic loss due to crop loss, parasitological studies on rodents is necessary to ascertain the health of humans and animals. So research objective, our main objective is to determine the prevalence of parasites in rodents and their zoonotic importance to public health, with specific objectives as to identify species of rodents in the study areas, to examine types of parasites present in the captured rodents, and to examine hemoparasites that cause zoonotic diseases in the area. So research questions, first, what are the rodent species found in Ruaha Ward in Kilosa District? What are parasites present in the captured rodents? And finally, what are zoonotic parasites? The area is characterized by bimodal rainfall, that is short and long rainfalls, with mean annual rainfall range from 1,000 to 1,400 millimeters, and mean annual temperatures 25 degrees Celsius. That design and sampling procedures, it is a cross-sectional study, and rodents were captured from fallow and cultivated land and inside the houses of the study areas. Trapping of rodents. Rodents were trapped using Sherman live trap and the locally made live trap. The traps were placed inside the houses, and in cultivated land, in fallow land, the traps were placed in transect land, whereby one trap distanced by another trap with the same lines was 5 meters, and between lines was 5 meters. So trap inspections every morning for 3 consecutive days. Trap were inspected every morning, and the trapped rodents were identified. So in blood collection, blood were collected from supraorbital veins and put on the microscopical slide, so that we prepared the thick and thin smears and then fixed it with methane. In laboratory, stain with giemsa, the 10% giemsas was carried out for 30 minutes, then washed with trap water for 10 seconds and dried. We washed the smear in order to remove the excess strain. Slides were observed under 100 magnification microscope with the early mentions, so as to identify the hemoparasites. Data was recorded in Excel sheets and prevalence were determined. So our results. That are the localities where rodents are captured. These are localities and the rodents captured. That these figures have a epidemiological advantage, so that we can identify which rodent in what area. So in our studies, 3 species of rodents were captured, that is ratus, Mastomys nalensis, and Etomis crassophilas. And those species make total for captured rodents 99, whereby the Mastomys nalensis have relatively higher relative abundance compared to other species. And you can see the males were more captured compared to females. You can see why in the discussion part. Also, the prevalence of parasites in all species, Rattus prevalence was 3, Mastomys was 1, while Ectomys was 0. So the total prevalence was 4, somehow small prevalence, but you can see the reasons why we encounter that prevalence. So the number of rodents captured in different localities, as I said, we trap the rodents from inside house, fallow land, and cultivated areas. You can see Mastomys anatensis as a high rate of abundance are captured highly in fallow land and cultivated land, while Rattus are kept only inside the house. So, in discussions, the rodent species captured in this study belong to cosmopolitan commensal rodents. Thus are often found in close association with peoples, as Rattus 22% shows moderate abundance and were captured inside houses. The presence of Rattus inside houses were influenced by poor housing conditions and hygienic conditions, as well as poor waste disposal and sanitation. These all factors are commonly occurred in developing countries like Tanzania, and in most cases are influenced by low living standards. So this study have demonstrated the presence of trypanosomes in the blood smear of rodents. We obtained trypanosomes species, with Rattus accounting for the majority of positive cases compared to other species. Also, the current study shows higher infestations of male rodents than females. This is attributed to ecological and behavior conditions that male rats are usually have wider range, as they can act, they defend the territories and they find food for others, so that they expose themselves to infestations. So low prevalence may be attributed to geographical difference in the distribution of vectors in the study areas. So as you said, the prevalence is only 4%, it's somehow low, but the low prevalence is attributed to geographical difference. It depends on the areas. Also, distribution of vectors in the study areas. As you can see, the occurrence of parasites is determined by abundance of the vectors responsible for the transmission. We can have rodents in the areas, but no vectors that can transmit the parasite to rodents. So that can lead to low prevalence. Perhaps, however, in addition, the low prevalence can be caused in our data somehow slow. 99, we captured 99 only species. So this is due to limited time that we have. So in conclusions, infestation of trypanosomes in rodents is of serious zoonotic importance. Rodent-borne parasites may become more serious in human populations. Zoonotic transmission of rodent-borne parasites are aggravated in communities where standard of environments, personal hygiene, and sanitation are not well maintained. So the three species of rodents documented in this study are their hemoparasites, and their hemoparasites are of veterinary and medical importance as far as the involvement in epidemiology of new and emerging infectious disease of epidemic importance cannot be put aside. By recommendations, since it is difficult to control hemoparasite infections in rodents rather than to control the interactions between rodents and humans, thus better planning of urban housing schemes is much encouraged. So forgetting the developing rural like Ruaha wards. Further, rodents management strategy should be ecological based, like environmental manipulations and intensive trapping, since rodent site is environmental and friendly, as well as seems to be ineffective methods to control rodents as reported by Makunde et al. in 1999. Thanks. That is the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Sabine. Thank you. I'm still waiting for the questions from after finishing. I apologize to Flora. Apologize. Maybe you have to make presentation next after Stella. That was Edis reporting. Could you take your seat? We call upon Stella case. Then after that, Flora will be following. Observe, time is 10 minutes. I think you have practiced. Thank you. Isaac. Hello, Isaac. Isaac.
I'm here.
Yeah, could you please wait for the question session?
Okay,
Thank you.
I'm waiting.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stella Casey. I'll be presenting part of my research work titled Variation in Rodent and Flea Diversity in Plague Persistence and Non-Plague Locality in Buru District, Northern Tanzania. I'll go straight to the introduction. Plague is one of the zoonotic disease, mostly harbored in rodents, and it is being caused by the bacteria Yersinia and transmitted to human mostly by the flea vector. The disease persistence and transmission are influenced by various factors, including climatic condition, land use change, and multiple host vector interaction. So, previous studies shows that host and vector species richness are associated with the emergence of zoonotic diseases. That the higher the diversity with less host species reduces the disease risk, while low diversity with most efficient host species, it increases the disease risk. So persistence and frequency of disease can be understood better by assessing the diversity of rodents and flea ectoparasites and the interaction with the human population. So far, the disease remains an important public health worldwide, with low number of plague outbreaks now than in the past. However, its transmission risk is apparently increasing due to anthropogenic and climate change. In Tanzania, the disease is being experienced mostly in the Lushoto district, found in Tanga region, and Buru district in Manyara region. And previous studies show that they have identified the transmission of Yersinia pestis in rodents with a multiple host vector interaction, which are over for plague transmission in Buru district. So it is hypothesized that through this study, the relative abundance of host and flea species will facilitate persistence in the area. So in this study, we assessed three objectives: the distribution of rodent abundance and diversity in locality, habitat, and season, the distribution of flea load, flea diversity, prevalence of infestation in locality, habitat, and season, and try to see the influence of temperature, humidity, and rainfall on flea index and rodent abundance in plague persistence in non-plague locality. The study was carried in Buru district within two villages, Endesh and Mongai. Thus, Endesh is plague and then the Mongai is non-plague locality. The district lies between 1,000 to 2,400 meters above sea level, and it consists of three seasons: dry season, long rain season, and short rain season. Main economic activities practiced are livestock keeping and agriculture. The habitat used the farmlands and the forest habitats, into which I used the Sherman traps, which were baited, and then placed in 5 transit lines, each with 10 trapping stations that were set 10 meters apart. And then the traps were inspected every morning, into which they were left for 3 consecutive nights. A total of 150 trap nights per month per habitat was conducted, and this was conducted within 12 months. And captured animals were then anesthetized, and then fleas were brushed And then the fleas were preserved in 70% ethanol, and then they were carried in the lab for the identification using relevant keys. For the captured animals, there were morphological measurements were taken, like the check on the sex and the body mass, and then they were identified into species level and then later confirmed using sequencing genes. Under statistical analysis, I expressed the rodent abundance by trapped axis with that formula, and then I calculated the flea load as average number of fleas per infested host. Prevalence of infestation was expressed as a proportion of rodents that were infested with flea among all rodents captured. And then the diversity was analyzed using the Shannon-Warner index. And then the rodent abundance, species richness, flea load, prevalence of flea infestation in rodent species were analyzed using the ANOVA. On my first result, the total rodents that were captured were around 420, belonging to 10 species. And they were significant, the abundance was significant in locality and season, and not significant in the habitats. And the interaction between habitat, season, rodent species on rodent abundance was also significant. And under rodent diversity, there was also significant between localities and season, and no significance between habitats. And here, Mastomys natalensis was the dominant species in locality, season, and the farm habitat. Coming to the flea, I had a total of 369 rodent flea belonging to 6 species with a total flea index of 0.88. And out of 420 rodents that were captured, only 128 were infested with flea. And also a significant difference of the flea load was obtained or was observed in between localities, season, rodent species, and the flea species themselves. And flea load on each individual rodent species was highest in Mastomys natalensis, which was dominated by the species Dinopsila and Xenoxyla brasiliensis for localities, habitat, and the season. And we also saw a significance of the flea load interaction between locality, flea species, habitat, rodent species, season, and rodent species and season. There was a significance of the flea load interaction between locality and flea species, and then habitat and the rodent species, season and the rodent species, and then rodent species and the flea species. On prevalence of flea infestation for each individual rodent species, the prevalence of infestation was also significant in locality, in season, in rodent species, and in flea species. And again, there was also a significance on interaction of the prevalence of flea infestation between locality and the flea species, habitat and the rodent species, season and the rodent species and the flea species. Objective number 3 on looking at the variation of the rodent abundance and flea index regarding on the rainfall, temperature, and humidity, we found out that high flea index with low rodent abundance was observed during long rain season, that was between March to May. And then during short rain season, both rodent and flea vector were increased. And on temperature, we had highest flea index between 18 degrees to 22 degrees centigrade, and lowest index at 14 to 16 degrees centigrade. While on the relative humidity, below 90% humidity, flea index was also low. And we also observed that July, during. So on the discussion is that the plague foci in the study area was characterized by rodent abundance in the short rain season. low species diversity with the dominance of the species Mastomys natalensis. And in such area, both plague persistence and epidemics will be expected, since it comprises of high species of hosts like Lophromys and Mastomys, which have been implicated to contribute in plague outbreaks, such as in Lushoto district. Also, the flea load and rodent host was higher in plague locality than non-plague locality, particularly for the two flea species, which are the primary plague species, Xenophila and Xenophila brasiliensis. And host species, particularly Lophromys macundi and Mastomys natalensis, were more infested within the flea plague locality. And then the infestation was also related to season, which was higher in the short rain season. A significant difference in interaction of the flea load between localities, between habitats, between season, and the rodent species could be contributed by the locality specific and the host specific. When I say locality specific, I mean the locality which had higher rodent abundance and higher flea load, of course, will have a higher chance of having plague persistence. And host specific, I mean flea load. The density of the flea load, of course, is associated with the density of the rodent. Is associated with the rodent density and other biological condition of the rodents, like the age, the sex, and the body mass. Since from the other studies, it is well reported that flea life cycle depends on rodent density, on the rodent development and survival. And then both temperature and humidity fluctuation influence flea index on rodent. But the low flea index, which was observed during July, despite that the same temperature and humidity were observed in the other month with the higher flea index, could be contributed by the low rodent host abundance during that month. And I didn't explain much on the effect of temperature and humidity on the rodent abundance, because these they don't have like a direct effect to rodent density, but instead mostly the rodent density is being influenced by vegetation characteristics, which can be observed through the seasonal changes. So my conclusion is that the presence and frequency of association, the presence and frequency association of susceptible plague rodents and primary flea species are among factors that will be influencing the long persistence in the plague foci. Then the climatic condition like humidity, temperature, and rainfall are among factors also favoring the survival and development of these flea vectors within the area. So in-depth studies being needed to understand the multiple interaction of these rodent hosts and the flea vectors within habitat, and also the burrows, and to understand the state of the Yersinia bacteria to each individual species from each environment and from each habitat in the burrow. And thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Take your seat. I'll wait for the question session. Now, with my second apology, we call upon Flora to have a presentation. As usual, it is only 10 minutes.
ladies and gentlemen. My name is Flora Kajuna, presenting the manuscript on behalf of my fellow co-authors as they are listed there. The title of the manuscript is Porcine Cysticercosis, Seroprevalence and Potential Transmission Risk Factors in Iringa District Council, Tanzania. The discussion will undergo with the listed sections there. Pig production is becoming a popular business in Tanzania, with current population approximately 2 million. This is according to Tanzania Livestock Sector Analysis 2017. And more than 82% of pigs in Tanzania are reared by smallholder farmers. However, little inputs impair householder pig production industry due to poor nutrition and diseases. That means the small-scale producers, they put little on production, which results into poor production and also diseases. Porcine cysticercosis is an infection in pig by the larval stage of a tapeworm Tinea solium. The porcine cysticercosis draw back the benefits in pig farming and reduces productivity due to pork condemnation, because the produced pig with the cyst ends up being condemned because of its poor quality. And the larvae stage, the cyst of Tinea solium can lead to worm infestation in human if ingested, and therefore lead to consequences on human being. And feces from a person infected with T. solium worm can facilitate infection with cyst to pigs and human being or persons. That's why we are addressing that people should dispose their feces into latrine and not elsewhere. Therefore, healthy education is the key into the control of Tinea solium, as on the picture representing the cyst appearance in the meat. So that meat is not good for consumption. It is even not convincing. Therefore, if the meat become of that stage, therefore it is a bad side to a producer, because we will end up being condemned the meat and make losses. Previous studies in Tanzania have reported prevalence of porcine cysticercosis in many parts of northern, central, and southern region, including Iringa. Therefore, the physical administered health education intervention trials suggested their potential for knowledge and possible reducing transmission of Tinea solium infection. Nevertheless, the sustainability and a wider coverage of communities with health education, this would benefit from the digital technology, because there are several education intervention has been practiced, but still the disease is there. So we are thinking of the digital health education. This could have reached each individual in learning on the control measures. Our general objective was to gather baseline data on porcine cysticercosis for evaluation of the planned digital health education in selected villages of Iringa Rural District. We also had specific objectives which concerned on to estimate the seroprevalence of porcine cysticercosis in Izazi, Migori, and Mlowa wards in Iringa, and also to assess the potential risk factors associated with porcine cysticercosis. The map representing is the Iringa region in Tanzania, showing the study sites of Izazi, Migori, and Mlowa in Iringa. Our study was carried out as a cross-sectional study. We were dealing with household, therefore we had a random sampling of 880 households, whereby we were able to obtain the sample size of 346 in number, that is above a bit of the calculated sample which were aimed. Our sample were harvested as you can see on the picture, that the blood was taken from the pig through jugular vena puncture, and this sampling was in parallel with the data collection study, whereby questionnaire and observational checklist used for data collection, and the observation was made during household visiting. And during data collection, we were aiming at collecting the information based on pig rearing systems. Why do they adopted the system they practiced on pig farming? And we were also wanted to know the households' latrine use. And also we harvested the information based on general understanding on tyneosis, cysticercosis, pig or pork inspection awareness. So we end up having results that presented porcine cysticercosis seroprevalence was generally 22.3 in those 3 wards. And we came to find that over half of the studied households, 53.4% had a positive case of porcine cysticercosis pig. Therefore, now we can know the disease is there. And when we were looking for the risk factors, we came to find that the pig confinement and pen quality were significantly associated with the positive antigen ELISA test, in such that the scavenging pigs, that means the pigs which were not kept in pen, were 2 times being in risk of being infected with the disease. And also pigs which were kept in a poor quality pen were having more chance of being infected as compared to pigs which were kept in good quality pens, as it is indicated on the table. And also we came to find that majority of those who were having pigs, therefore majority of the pigs studied were kept in poor quality pen, so they were exposed to the infection. As you can see on the table, about 178 pigs were living in poor pen quality. Therefore, they were exposed to the cysticercosis infection. We can say that more than half of the surveyed households had positive porcine cysticercosis case, despite of several studies that was claimed to be studied concerning with the prevalence. So we still say, in a current situation, the disease is still there. So we have to find the way or intervention which can sensitize the community on the way to eliminate the disease. So we can work together with the rural communities in the session of trying to remove or to reduce the education concerning with this issue, because it is a really problem. Therefore, training also on skills for improved pig management using available resources to overcome poverty and empower farmers to profitable production should be practiced so that to reduce the tinea solium risks. We cannot leave behind the campaign on village animal slaughter point to be constructed and making a campaign on consumption of animal products inspected by authorized personnel. This is very, very important. And also community sensitization on latrine use is important. Therefore, we need also to research in which way we can sensitize these communities to use latrine, because we might find the latrines are there, but the community or the individuals do not use them. Instead, they go and defecate in bushes. We concluded by saying that the area was endemic for porcine cysticercosis, and also community was practicing an open defecation. That's why the disease is still there. And also there were people having tapeworm, so they were the tapeworm carriers in that particular area. That's why the disease is there. Therefore, what should we do? We have to work on pig management skills, to educate this community on the way to manage pigs so that they can produce a pork of good quality. And also sensitize them on consumption of the inspected animal products, which is so essential. And this could be introduced in the package for training, which is in digital health education. Therefore, the message here is to advocate on proper latrine utilization, as you can see on a green tick. And also, we have to address and work on making sure that the community are practicing good pig management, including having the pig shelter which can confine pigs so as to avoid pig roaming around, that is scavenging. And also we make sure that we avoid open defecation as it is appear on a red cloth. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Flora. Now we'll sit for the question session. Now we call upon Freddie Blower, who's around. And the last representative will be Alex. Alex is around? Yes. Freddie Blower, 3 minutes, please. Could you please use the mic?
Yeah. Good afternoon. Yeah, my name is Freddie Moro. I'm going to present to you a topic titled Challenges and Opportunities in the Diagnosis of Tinea Sodium Psychosis and Tiniosis in developing countries, Tanzanian experience. My presentation will go through this outline, and by definition, Tinea Sodium Psychosis Tiniosis is a zoonotic disease which is caused by a tapeworm called Tinea Sodium, and it is transmitted between man and pigs. Regarding the dynamics, but this disease is important in the sense that it's neurotic. I mean, the larval stage of the parasite in the central nervous system, which is associated with neuropsychosis, accounts for the more than 30% of the epileptic cases worldwide in endemic regions, and it is also associated with economic losses, mainly due to condemnation of the cystic positive pigs, but also cost of treatment of the infected patients. Therefore, as to explain more, it's about the available diagnostic methods. We have tongue palpation and meat inspection, which is used to diagnose the parasites in the pig, but also a stool microscope, which is used to diagnose the parasite in human, and mainly this is an adult stage of the parasite, that is tiniosis. But also we have imaging techniques such as the MRI and CT scanners, which are used to diagnose the neuronal stage of the parasite in human. So this disease, diagnosis of this disease is challenged by the low sensitivity and specificity of diagnostic tools in man and pigs, but also the diagnostic tools which have high sensitivity and specificity are very expensive to be adequately available in resource-limited countries like Tanzania. Also, we have a national health policy to control diseases within the country, but this disease is not accommodated there, and therefore also we are not certain whether the disease is what is the treatment guidelines of the disease are within the guidelines by WHO in your local situation. Therefore, Tanzania, like other countries in low economic countries, is likely to be facing the disease, challenges in diagnosing the disease in our settings, although we have little information regarding as to how big is the challenge. Therefore, our research question was, what are the gaps in the diagnosis of Tinea Sodium Psychosis and human neuropsychosis in Tanzania, and specifically, the objective of this study was to identify gaps which exist in the diagnosis of Tinea Sodium Psychosis and human neuropsychosis in medical and veterinary settings. Therefore, to answer these questions, we did a cross-sectional study using a quantitative and qualitative approach of research in 5 regions and 5 districts of Tanzania. With the quantitative research, we did a questionnaire interview to 152 officers in charge of primary health facilities and 108 unit inspectors, which were randomly selected. And this key, qualitative research was done using key informants interview to 33 medical and veterinary officers from district to ministerial level. Quantitative data were collected using Afya Data tool, and the questions that were designed specifically were aimed at capturing data on the practitioners' sufficiency and knowledge on the parasite biology, a number of primary health facilities which had laboratories. Also, we had to know the number of status labs and presence of qualified practitioners in both the medical and the veterinary side at the ground level. On the quantitative part, we also almost had the same kind of questions, which were aimed to capture the challenges at the diagnosis of this disease from different level to higher level, especially at the referral hospitals and that kind of. So we analyzed the quantitative data using SPSS software, and specifically we targeted proportion. We analyzed it for proportions, but we also did the chi-square to analyze it for association of variables at p-value less than 0.005. I mean 0.05. The qualitative data were analyzed using an Atlas TI software following transcription of the audio recorded data. And the idea was considered to be a demo idea if we had 50 or more % of the respondents discussing the idea. So the results, we had here a total of 250 participants which were interviewed, and 71.5 were males. And like I said before, we had 152 officers in charge of primary health facilities and 108 meat inspectors. Of the 33% participants of qualitative research, we had 84.4 of them being male, and 16 were medical officers, while 17 were veterinary officers. We found that of 152 primary health facilities, 13.8 were health centers, while also 33.8 had the laboratory with the capability to do stool analysis. Therefore, they were capable of diagnosing hernia processes, including tiniosis. But also, we had the officers, 77.6 officers in charge who were medical health professional background, meaning that the rest were professionals. They were medical officers, but had different specialties within their field. And also, we had a total of 40.7% of meat inspectors who had animal health professional background. And of the 108 meat inspectors that were interviewed, it was only 20 of them who had meat slaughter slabs. Knowledge-wise, it was found that 81.2% of meat inspectors scored only and above average regarding tinea solium sicca description, and it was only 42.1 of officers in charge of primary health facilities who had correctly described the larval stage of the parasite. Contrary to that, we had 42.6% of meat inspectors who correctly described the adult stage of the parasite, while we had 77.8% of officers in charge of primary facilities who were able to correctly describe the larval stage, the adult stage of the temple. It was generally found that meat inspectors were more knowledgeable regarding tinea solium sicca than officers in charge. Those were about quantitative data. Then on the quantitative part, we found that primary health facilities were challenged by inadequate facilities and personnel to diagnose tiniosis, but also secondary and the tertiary health facilities lacked diagnostic imaging machines such as the CT scan and the MRI, but also there were fewer physicians who were capable of diagnosing neuropsychosis or epilepsy, so on the veterinary part, porcine psychosis diagnosis was challenged by an inadequate number of qualified meat inspectors, but also we had fewer slaughter labs and inadequate facilitation in their day-to-day meat inspection activities. To discuss, I would say we had more males than females in our study, because we have always more males than females being enrolled in medical and veterinary colleges, and this is reflected also in their working in their working conditions. And it was found that qualitative and quantitative data complemented one another, and they provided the room for triangulation of information that we got. Specifically, diagnosis of tiniosis was challenged by fewer number of laboratory facilities, which reflects the fact that there was a reduced efficiency of diagnosis of helminthosis infections, including tiniosis, and this interferes with the primary role that we believe these primary health facilities could be playing, that they are expected to be the catchment area to capture data concerning tiniosis burden, but then they are less facilitated. Then we can't by confidently say that the number of tiniosis we have is the way it is, taking into account that our facilities are not that much capable. But also at level 1 health facilities, talking of district hospitals and the like, these ones were capable of diagnosing the disease because they were facilitated with the personnel and the diagnostic tools. However, due to limited resources and the economic status of the community, less of these patients were capable of accessing these level 1 health facilities. But also the inherent behavior of patients to ignore the referral to higher health centers to conditions that they consider to be minor makes it difficult for them to access these level 1 health facilities. Therefore, whatever we may say we know about the burden of this parasite may not reflect the reality. On the human side, we had insufficient imaging machines and tertiary health facilities. And we also know that the accessibility of these facilities by most of resource-limited individuals is difficult. Therefore, whatever we may say we know about the burden of neuropsychosis in our country may not reflect the reality, because less of the patients will be capable of accessing these facilities due to economic and economic crisis that they have that will interfere with the traveling and diagnostic costing in a bit to afford. Therefore, on the person side, meat inspectors were that much lower, indicating that most of the pigs in that area were home slaughtered, meaning that we had difference in knowledge regarding the parasite. This could be explained by the fact that we have meat inspectors working in endemic areas where we have porcine psychosis prevalent, and therefore they encounter the parasite regularly, and therefore they are in a position to describe the parasite more than medicals. In contrary, we have medical respondents being much more aware of how they are knowledgeable on the other temporal, because their working condition allows them to meet the other stage of the parasite than the meat inspectors. To conclude, I would say tinniasolium is still, tiniosis was an important psychosis diagnosis is still a challenge in the medical and veterinary sectors, and the burden or the challenge is reflected in differently, with the two different stages, two different levels of health facilities. We have tinnitus diagnosis being a challenge in primary health facilities because they don't have those primary or basic equipment to diagnose the disease. But we have neuropsychosis being a challenge at level 2 and level 3, that is referral hospitals, because we don't have those imaging machines and the personnel. On the person psychosis, we have inadequate facilitation and qualified meat inspectors, which interferes with the efficient diagnosis of this parasite. So we recommend a one healthy approach to address this challenge, where we have to improve the knowledge of primary health facility, primary health workers and the meat inspectors on the dynamics behind this parasite, its prevalence and the risk factors, whatever, for infection, so that these ones can be in a position to control the parasite at the ground level, and this one will be reflected even at a higher level. And on the diagnosis side, we need to have diagnostic facilitation at from lower level to higher level, to have the ability to capture the disease burden within the locality. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Now we have last but not least, paper for this session. You're welcome. Isaac? Isaac?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you very well. Maybe we'll give you 2 to 3 minutes to conclude your findings because there was a breakdown on communication. Is it okay?
Pardon?
I said I will be giving you 2 to 3 minutes to conclude your findings because there was a missing communication breakdown.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. Are you talking about this slide?
Pardon? Hello.
Yes.
We'll give you after this presentation, we'll give you 3 minutes. Just see, hold on.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, good afternoon to everyone. My name is Alex Yonat. I want to share with you our study on the examination of seasonal variability of indicator PCBs in fish, a case of Nile perch product from Lake Victoria in Tanzania. This is our presentation outline, and so the PCBs are the organic compounds. They are among the organic compounds that are man-made chemicals, and the original persistent organic pollutants, that is PCBs, have been discussed by the Stockholm Convention. So they are very stable mixtures that are resistant to extreme temperatures and pressures. That's why they tend to accumulate in fish species. So the PCBs were widely used in electrical equipment. They are widely used in electrical equipment like the capacitors and transformers as flame retardants, because they tend to reduce the amount of the flame that is in a given material. So when they enter the environment, they tend to resist degradation by biological or chemical means, and therefore they are characterized by their lipophilic nature. They are lipophilic in nature because of this property, and therefore they tend to accumulate in fish fat tissues. And they tend to accumulate in fat tissues in living organisms. The PCBs are toxic. They are toxic compounds, and they tend to travel longer distances before they are finally deposited in environmental samples. They also have the ability to accumulate in aquatic biota and biomagnify. They tend to increase in concentration when they enter organisms at high trophic levels. And they are referred as endocrine disrupting agents, as they have the ability of disrupting and altering the regular working of the endocrine system. That is the PCBs. So, and when they are consumed by the human beings and other consumers, then the concentration of these compounds tend to increase in the body, and therefore resulting into different adverse effects like the cancer and other diseases that can be caused by such compounds. So the objective of this study was to assess the impact of seasonal variability of the indicator PCBs in the fish species in different products of the fish that are consumed by human beings. And the main focus was on the indicator PCBs. We mainly focused on the indicator PCBs because different studies have indicated that or have reported that they are more persistent and bioaccumulative than other PCBs. Therefore, we considered this because it is more persistent than other PCBs. So the study was carried out in the Lake Victoria Basin, that is Mwanza, Kagera, and Msoma. That is where the study was carried out. And the study involved samples collection, samples extraction and cleanup in order to get the supernatant that we can extract the PCBs, we get chromatographic analysis, and then the samples were analyzed in order to get the respective components. So this is the recovery study which was carried out in order to determine the sensitivity, accuracy, and the suitability of the analytical method. That means the samples were inoculated with the PCBs of our interest, like as they are seen in this table. And these are the results of the inoculation process and the analysis which was carried out. And it indicates that the PCBs ranged from 71, the recoveries ranged from 71.3 to 93% in approximation. And it should be noted that this study was effective because our range was 71.3 to 93.5%, and different studies have indicated that the study is said to be a suitable one if the range of the quantities of the products that are analyzed ranges between 70 and 120, and ours ranged from 71 to 93%. So this study was good, and it was satisfactory, and it indicates that good performance of the analytical procedure that we applied in that particular case. And therefore, the results herein suggest a good performance of a gas chromatographic analysis that was carried out. And these are the results of the PCBs which were determined in fish muscles. And we determined, they indicate the 7 indicator PCBs that we understand. And the results indicate that the levels of the PCBs during the rainy season were higher than the levels of the PCBs during the dry season. That means the rain is a carrier of these PCBs from one place to the other. And the results further indicates that the PCBs, the consumer PCBs like the consumer PCB 138, 153, and 18, were not determined in the fresh fish muscles during the dry season, but they were determined during the rainy season. You can find that the levels are greater. The levels during the rainy season are greater than the levels of the PCBs during the dry season, which means that there are a high risk of getting these contaminants during the rainy season than the dry season. And it appears in this case that we find the levels of the PCBs, the 3 PCBs, 138, 153, and 18 during the rainy season in fresh fish muscles. But there is no the levels of these compounds during the dry season, which means that these compounds are bioaccumulative. They tend to bioaccumulate in these organisms during the rainy season, and they are also tend to be more persistent compared to other PCBs. And it should be known that there were higher levels of the indicator PCBs during the rainy season than the dry season, as it can be seen in this particular figure. So the pattern of the total PCBs loaded for both seasons, dry and rainy season, we are in the order that there were less levels of these compounds in fresh fish muscles, followed by the deep fried products, and this was followed by the salted, sun-dried products, then smoked products, and finally the trims. The trims had higher levels of these compounds because of their high amount of fat that they contain in that particular body, followed by the smoked products, indicating that the smoke itself has great problems of contributing these compounds compared to other products. So analysis of variance indicates that the levels were significantly different compared to the consumer PCB 180, indicating that there is high probability of getting these compounds compared to the rest. So, based on the findings of this study, we concluded that the levels of the detected PCBs varied with the seasons, with the rainy season having high levels, significantly high levels of these compounds compared to the dry season. And this indicates that seasonality can have a significant impact of the PCBs in environmental samples. And it indicates that in both seasons, the maximum recommended limits, as it can be indicated, meaning that the fish products are safe for human consumption. And this indicates that the fish are safe for human consumption in regards of the indicator PCBs that we analyzed, and therefore we can go on eating the fish mussels that are obtained from Lake Victoria because of the lower levels than the recommended levels in.
Isaac?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, could you conclude please your findings?
Which the slide of the results?
Instead of the results, and if there is any conclusion and recommendation.
Okay. I begin from here, I think.
Can you share?
All right. Oh. So maybe the main thing I can talk about here is the parental material of these soils are basically complex of cysts and messes. And the topography is gentle, very rare abrupt, and takes the form of peneplain. The dissections are shallow river valleys. This plain is full of small streams, so many of them. The natural vegetation is mosaic of tropical rainforest, and the soils are acidic. And the analysis of the physical and the chemical properties of the soil, or the topsoil, is in this one here. I'm difficult to write, and then the classification of the soil. From the 10 profiles that we looked at, we found that these are the types of the soils which we find in place. That is the acrysols or feralic acrysols. Then the lactic and phlogisols, and then the lactic ambisols, the chemo acrysols, retisols, and chernozymes. Those are the main soil we found. So in my discussion here, in our discussion here, the dominant soil texture in that place is sandy clay loam. even going up to as far as up to 50 or 60 centimeter economic profile. The clay content increases as we go down profile. The soils were formed by translocation, movement from the top to down, the elevation and the innovation. The probability also is there that from sheet erosion, although the soil is very gentle, almost 2 to the valleys, which makes also the temperature it contains mica or feldspar. These are the major sources of clay in highly weathering conditions. So here it is expected that this part, the clay content is coming from there. And the soils are mainly acidic, ranging from 5.5 to 7.5. And this range is still okay for most of the micro and macronutrients. And then we found that the total organic carbon is really low, very low in this soil. That's why when we talk about maintenance of organic matter in this area, given that the people are burning, what they're doing slash and burn, shifting cultivation, then they're depleting the soil organic matter. So even the nitrogen which contained in the soil organic matter is very low. So both soil organic carbon and nitrogen decreases with the depth in the soil. Even the phosphorus we find is very low. That's very, very low. So the entire exchange capacity is very low, ranging from 4 to 15.4 in equivalent 100 grams. The results here indicate that the soils are generally poor in fertility status. So, with the presence of the soil organic matter, this is only what is given in the first 1 or 2 years that people can cultivate on it. That's why the fertility disappears and they have to move to the next area. So in this area, you can grow many types of varieties. Maize can grow, sorghum, rice, millets, coffee, and then timber is there, this teak. And then in conclusion, this green belt zone is dominated by sand particles, that is coarse texture. The soils are acidic in reaction with low organic carbon, very low CEC. Phosphorus is the most limiting nutrient in the soils, followed by nitrogen. The soils are neither saline nor sodic, but they are very shallow and variable, subject to the leaching also. The implication is that the soils are inherently poor in fertility, hence they need fertilizer and organic matter inputs to sustain crop life. But what I should underline here, in South Sudan, they've not allowed even the use of fertilizer, although the farmers or the traders are bringing fertilizer to the country. And even the Ministry of Agriculture has not even thought of how it should be used. People are using on their own. They're misusing the fertilizer. At the end of the day, they say fertilizer is not good. So what the recommendation is replenishment of depleted soil nutrients through non-acidifying industrial or organic fertilizer is recommended. And then there is need for bylaws and appropriate afforestation training programs, which is recommended for this type of soil. So more soil fertility management research is recommended in this way. That's all I have at this time. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Ezra, for your participation and also giving us the conclusion on your findings. Now it is the time for questions, suggestions. Dr. Matrono.
Thank you. I have questions to Alex Winard. When you are describing the problem or justification, when you are presenting results, I didn't say, maybe I missed the I missed the control. Did you include a negative and a positive control just to in the same run, just to make sure that the results you are referring and the conclusion is right? Because you said the results are variable with seasons, but that could also be related to your experiments errors. If I missed that, please, you can educate me. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Madam, do you have a question? Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Alex. In our country, organochlorine pesticides have been banned, and in the list of banned pesticides, TPRI, among it is organochlorine pesticide. Now, I don't get well when you are saying there is still variation in accumulation of these organochlorine pesticides accumulated in the fishes. So where would be coming from if in our country we already banned, and when it rains, then it comes to the lakes, and then it still accumulates. So I want to understand if our nearby countries whom we share the Lake Victoria are also with the same condition which have been adopted in Tanzania. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My question goes to Flora Kajuna. As we have seen this, the parasite of the yeast is most spread due to hygienic practices and due to contamination. My question I want to know if this can be eliminated through cooking processes.
Another question?
Yeah, my question is directed to Isaac Musguba. Thanks for your good presentation, which was more of a soil characterization in your country. So when I looked at the way you were presented, I'm trying to look at the aspect of adding value to the information that you have generated. At the beginning, you indicated like you used the remote sensing, kind of GIS analysis from that perspective. So at the end, I was expecting to see spatial layers of soil, showing the extent of different soil types, but that wasn't. So I'm wondering, if somebody wants to do any kind of intervention, how can somebody do it? Because you're based on point data. So how do you operationalize your data, all your data that you have been generated from the analysis, to make it more viable for somebody who wants to do a kind of intervention in that particular area? Thanks. I hope you got me well.
Thank you, I heard you.
Okay, Isaac, perhaps you can answer the question. Isaac, continue to answer the question.
Thank you very much for that question. Yes, the truth is that information my paper requires that bit of information to be put, which is to do with because I used GIS. I have that information which I have to produce, that soil map, which is really needed in that area. So I will do that.
Prof, you have any addition? Okay, thank you, Isaac. Now it comes for Flora. You have a question? Anybody has the question or two?
She's supposed to answer a question.
Thank you for a nice question. We veterinarian and the meat inspector, we don't recommend for consumption the pork that has been found to be infected. even if there is a single infestation, if there is a recognition of a single cyst on a pork, that pork is deemed to be condemned. Simply because there are a variety of methods of meat preparation. It is not quite 100% that all the meat preparation methods do meet the destroyment of the cyst during cooking processes. That's why we recommend for not consumption of the meat that has found with even a single cyst. What we recommend is we have to consume the inspected meat that has been approved by a specialist, meat inspector or a veterinarian. And for such kind of meat is when we recommend the consumers that they have to process by boiling first and then make another process by whether frying or whatever any means of cooking, but you have to boil first and cook. But that particular meat should be already passed for consumption. That's I can say.
Have you answered? Madam? Are you satisfied with the answer? Now, we turn to Alex.
Thank you for the questions that have been given to me by doctor from the veterinary medicine. The first one was the evidence that people have been using transformer oils in frying the fish species from Lake Victoria. And yes, they have been using. We administered the questionnaires before we can carry out the study, and the people agreed that they have been using, presented this information, which is from the questionnaire. Number two, from the same person, whether I missed the control or I used the control. The controls were performed in the study area in order to see whether the process itself is working. But the results are not included in here because of we just wanted to narrow down the tables of figures. But I can come in your office to show you the information that we attended for the controls and also for administering the questionnaires. Another question were on the use of organochlorine pesticides which have already been banned. I assure you that they have been banned, but they are still used in Uganda. They are banned in Tanzania, but they are still used in Uganda, and because they can transfer longer distances, even this amount which we obtained, it is probably we are sharing the same lake. The Lake Victoria is in Uganda as well. It is probably that they have been using the organochlorine pesticides in Uganda, but they are transferred through the waterways to Tanzania, where we can obtain the levels of these organochlorine pesticides. So it is still used in Uganda, but even in our parts, some parts of Tanzania that are close to Uganda, they are using the same pesticide. We managed to go to Bukoba in certain areas which are close to Uganda. We met that they have been using the organochlorine pesticides like DDTs, which is banned in Tanzania, but it is still used because in Uganda they are still using the same pesticides. Thank you very much.
Okay. There is a follow-up question by Dr. Matomi.
Thank you. It's just clarification. The presenter have responded well, but my second question was referring to the analytical side in the lab. Because you presented different types of sample, fresh, fried, etc. So in the samples, did you include the control samples?
I didn't include the control samples.
Okay, any more? Isaac? 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 Yopo. Isaac? Yeah. Isaac? Isaac? Isaac?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah. There are two more questions. Yeah, the first one, pardon?
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, the first one is that you said that farmers are using having this kind of the research findings. For example, you said you would analyze kind of the research. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Should I go straight or the way?
Yeah, you can go straight.
Okay. What I was trying to clarify about the use of fertilizer in South Sudan is this. The government has no policy for the use of fertilizer in this country. And even politicians are saying the country is so fertile that even it doesn't need any fertilizer. So that's why politically people are talking about even some farmers, even in my own case, when I started, because this result is for the soil. I'm also doing for maize now, trying to try fertilizer on maize for further recommendation. Even some people refuse that their land should not be used when I try to involve the farmers. So the farmers have been brainwashed or have been informed that the use of fertilizer will spoil their land. It is not good. It's going to destroy their land. It's not produce. But at the same time, some of them even say it will kill. But the question I was asking some of them is, but we are importing food from neighboring countries where fertilizers have been applied. In South Sudan at the moment, we are in serious problem of food insecurity. And our food is coming from other countries where fertilizers have been provided. Now, why do we complain? And that is one of the reasons why the research is done in South Sudan, so that the results can be shared with the government. Definitely it will be shared. After the presentation now, when the right time comes to present here, I will do the same also to present to them, so that they see the results. So now what I'm waiting for is, with the soil results, I'm waiting for the maize crop result, which is coming. Because now I'm in the second season, I've planted. I'm waiting for the third season, which will be in August. Now, after that result, because I've applied fertilizer, I will use it now to explain to the people, even the government, the policy makers, at the state level as well as the national level. Tell them this is what is happening, and even to show them, although the soil, they say it is very, we will definitely go to a very bad situation in such this part of the area, the green belt. The soils need to be managed well, but we don't have the research to back this. So they can't do it. They're doing other things, like for example, talking about the improved seeds, they're talking about that. They go to pest management, control, all those things they're doing. But in terms of soil fertility management, with fertilizers, even with the organic things, they don't. Except some areas where cattle are being reared, they use cow dung, but not even in a very proper way, in order to get the best out of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Isaac, for your nice clarification. And this is next at the end of our session. Wish you all the best in Sudan.
Thank you very much.
Now, before I end up our session, we wanted to clarify whether we'll be having the next session, if these presenters will be around. Eliza Mpenza, is she around? Eliza? What about George Makingi? Yeah, Makingi is there around. And Digna? Not around. Charles Elias. And we have also Sigwado. Not around. We're gonna go on Flora Kajun. Okay. We have Nyangi. And then the last one will be another Nyangi because he has two different papers. So by next session, it seems that we have only one presenter.
Or is there another person who was supposed to present?
Thank you very much. Yes. Which one? No, there will be another. There will be two sessions that will be after lunch. There will be two sessions. So I think the one will be joined than the other session. Yeah. Thank you. So we break for the lunch. The lunch is ready. 20 minutes. More than that, 20 minutes will be enough. Thank you.
Kaiser.
Guys, perhaps let's just allow this person to present, because it seems the other session is finished presentation, so it will be a session of evaluation. So it's better that we give George this opportunity to present. He was here waiting for us, listening, so we also listen to him. George, please, take the stage. Okay.